behind-the-scenes government that was afraid of losing power by allowing you to know about the landings like this one. A handful of people had first-hand access to this information, and so it was easy to cast this event as fiction by denying the public any facts and then raising the question about whether or not it's real. If the only thing you know comes to you from one of your senses and they block hearing and sound, how are you going to perceive the information? You have only smell, taste, and touch left, so you are denied the truth by the blockage. People ask, if aliens are real, why don't they land on the White House lawn? Well, I'd like to tell you the story of Valiant Thor and his two friends. Jill is a very, very lovely, slender blonde who I'd like to marry, and I don't care where her family comes from. Venus. Doesn't matter. Wow, if this is one of those artificial images they put into your mind, hiding their true appearance, they really know what I like. Look at those lips. So kissable. Look at the soft skin. Makes you want to touch it. Lovely lady. I'll bet she looks exactly the same today. I wouldn't be surprised if she's 130 years old in this photo, just like Samjasi and Asket. But if the babe lives to be 2,000, then 130 is young. Dawn is in the middle and Valiant Thor on the right. All of them have a foreign look, but it's not European. They look so classic that they can't be from around here. Our people are ugly. I read this story many years ago, and as I recall, Nixon rejected Thor's offer to keep the people of Earth in perfect health because he said that it would bankrupt the country. I guess a lot of the political contributions were coming from those who were making a killing from the illnesses and drugs, and Nixon didn't want to disrupt that flow of currency into the hands of dirty, filthy, mudslinging, corrupt politicians. That's okay. We can just die of cancer and suffer from disease until we get rid of representatives who don't represent us. Let me read the article from the allseeingeye.us webpage. On March 16, 1957, in Alexandria, Virginia, Valiant Thor landed his craft and was met by two police officers, weapons drawn, of course. I'm surprised they didn't blow the guy away. Through thought transference, which is a polite way of saying telepathy, he convinced the officers that he meant no harm as he was ushered into the back of their patrol car. I guess those two cops are dead today. They were dead shortly after the event to keep them quiet. After crossing over into Washington, D.C., they were met by Secretary of Defense along with 6 of his staff members. Valiant Thor, the human extraterrestrial from Venus. Washington, D.C. VIP during the late 1950s. The Valiant Thor landing 002741-57, room 4D-717, Project Blue Book, by Harley Andrew Byrd. Notice that last name, Byrd. Nephew to the late Rear Admiral Richard R.E. Byrd, United States Navy. During the winter of 1956 and 57, the Washington, D.C. area was extremely cold, but it was a good feeling to be working in a high-security position in the Pentagon. I lived only a short distance away in Georgetown, the old section of the nation's capital. Senator J.F. Kennedy lived on O Street, just a block away from our house on Prospect. Sounds credible so far. During a successful tour with the U.S. Navy Ceremonial Honor Guard, we had met with astronauts Glenn Cooper and Whaley Schirra, who were the first wave of successful space travelers. Also, we had visited the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier numerous times. It seemed like every time a visiting dignitary came to Washington, they lay another wreath at the tomb. We had met the Queen of England several times. Is she a reptile? At the airport, as these were some of the duties I performed as a young officer in the Navy. After carrying the 2-star flag at the funeral of my late uncle, Rear Admiral Richard E. Byrd, I was recommended for a security clearance and was granted a top-secret clearance after a lengthy 6-month background study, B1 complete 1957. After being transferred to the Chief of Naval Information, CHINFO, I worked in the security clearance section before being indoctrinated into the branch office of the Air Force called Project Blue Book. It was a joint service office, that is, 2 Marines, 2 Army, 2 Navy, and 3 Air Force officers. The work was routine, like the clockwork within men's watches, opening incoming mail, sorting out what was called actual sightings, as opposed to many fake UFO photos, which were probably all released to the public. We also acted as a public information office, PIO, much like a public relations office, much like a propaganda office. Every publisher's dream was to get the real lowdown on the UFO situation, which was hidden from the people, which was suppressed by the group that dictated national policy on the UFO matter. Hooray, he tells the truth. In March 1957, we received an urgent message from the Alexandria Police Department. The message indicated that 2 of their on-duty police officers had picked up an alien who had landed some 14 miles south of Pentagon Boulevard, and the occupant was transported to the Pentagon to meet the Undersecretary of Defense, and then shuttled underground to meet with President Eisenhower and Vice President Richard Nixon, the dirty bastard, tricky dick. The meeting lasted for nearly an hour, and then the alien visitor was put on VIP status and was shuttled back to the Pentagon, where he spent the night in the Army reception office on the first floor near the concourse. This alien's name was Valiant Thor. I heard he spent 3 years there and had to give up because Nixon was such a hardhead. I didn't hear it, I read it. Commander James was on duty at the security clearance and review for the branch officer of the Project Blue Book. He oversaw the meeting through official channels and reported the landing and meeting of the space emissary, as he was labeled by the Department of Defense, to a governing group of high military officials, including Secretary of Defense F.F. Forstall and other scientific men, of which there were 12. They in turn made recommendations to the President and cabinet members. The CIA, FBI, NSA, and so on were likely to hear the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth from those bastards. The landing of Valiant Thor was perhaps the first documented landing of a human-type alien by military officials. He contacted an individual in the Pentagon who was an advocate of the UFO alien situation. Nancy Warren, in turn, contacted a minister who was also a private investigator and theologian, a Dr. Frank E. Strangus, who then met with this individual and wrote a book on it. Dr. Strangus had been a guest speaker at the National Evangelistic Center for 2 weeks. Val Thor landed in Alexandria and met with the president to discuss the world's problems and offer advice and counsel on how to deal with and eliminate them. He indicated to Mr. Eisenhower that the world was in a precarious situation, and that if the world continued to proceed on a war footing, it would cause an economic imbalance throughout the world. Val Thor stayed on Earth until March 16, 1960, and then disembarked to his home planet Venus. Well, that's almost 3 years to the day. He arrives mid-March 1957 and gives up in utter disgust March 16, 1960. He was indeed there 3 years, just like I remember. Continuing the article, he indicated that his race of people lived and dwelled underground on Venus, and that many of the planets throughout the universe sustain life in the same manner. He stated that a group from a distant planetary system would be coming to give aid and data to help the Earth's progress. Val Thor spoke of Christ's presence in the universe, probably to appease Dr. Strangus, and that it was heartwarming to see Christ's advanced teaching continuing. This visitation at the Pentagon marks perhaps a new era in knowledge, wisdom, and understanding on our planet. Too bad it wasn't shared with us. Here is a story which was kept from you by a secret behind-the-scenes government that was afraid of losing power by allowing you to know about the landings like this one. A handful of people had first-hand access to this information, and so it was easy to cast this event as fiction by denying the public any facts and then raising the question about whether or not it's real. If the only thing you know comes to you from one of your senses and they block hearing and sound, how are you going to perceive the information? You have only smell, taste, and touch left, so you are denied the truth by the blockage. People ask, if aliens are real, why don't they land on the White House lawn? Well, I'd like to tell you the story of Valiant Thor and his 2 friends. Jill is a very, very lovely, slender blonde who I'd like to marry, and I don't care where her family comes from. Venus. Doesn't matter. Wow, if this is one of those artificial images they put into your mind, hiding their true appearance, they really know what I like. Look at those lips. So kissable. Look at the soft skin. Makes you want to touch it. Lovely lady. I'll bet she looks exactly the same today. I wouldn't be surprised if she's 130 years old in this photo, just like Sam Jassy and Ascot. But if the babe lives to be